The Merskrit representative's warning fell on deaf ears as the council descended into procedural arguments. None noticed the quantum signature of Alina's neural transmission reaching Earth in milliseconds rather than the expected hours. The encryption protocols she'd used were reserved for only one circumstance: extinction-level threats to human existence. Aboard the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch, Alina locked herself in her quarters. Her hands trembled as she opened a small wooden box containing actual paper photographs. Technology considered quaintly obsolete but valued by humans for its permanence and unhackable nature. Her niece Sophie smiled up at her, gap-toothed and beaming beside New Eden's famous floating gardens. The image blurred as Alina's tears fell. "Ambassador, incoming transmission from Earth Central," her AI assistant announced. "Priority Alpha." The holographic display showed President Kwan, her usually composed features drawn with grief, and something Alina had never seen in the leader's eyes before: cold fury. The Security Council vote was unanimous. Kwan stated without preamble, "Prometheus Protocol is activated." Alina's breath caught. "Madam President, once we commit to this..." "We recovered partial transmissions from New Eden before communications went dark," Kwan interrupted. "The Vrex weren't just killing our people. They were experimenting, testing different bioweapons to catalog human suffering responses." The president's voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened. "They targeted schools first." A heavy silence hung between them. "The Concordat has failed us, just as the simulations predicted," the president continued. "We gave them 3 centuries to prove that a diplomatic solution was sustainable." Alina closed her eyes. "And if we're wrong, if we're overreacting to one atrocity, then history will judge us harshly," Kwan acknowledged. "But if we're right, if the galaxy needs the intervention we've prepared for, then failing to act would make us complicit in every innocent death that follows." She leaned closer to the camera. "You know what Admiral Chen's historical analysis concluded. When civilizations reach our level of development, they either become predators or they become prey, unless they become protectors." Alina finished the familiar argument. "The choice was made for us today," President Kwan said softly. "Return to Earth. We need you here when they realize what's coming." As the transmission ended, Alina felt the subtle shift in the ship's engines. The Olive Branch had already changed course for Earth, its AI responding to embedded commands in the president's authenticated transmission. Throughout human space, civilian vessels altered trajectories in carefully choreographed patterns, creating the impression of panicked retreat. Military vessels disguised as freighters and science stations went dark, only to reappear in precisely calculated defensive positions. Dormant facilities hidden in asteroid belts and beneath the surfaces of uninhabited moons activated contingency protocols that had been regularly updated but never fully deployed. In her quarters, Alina accessed the classified briefing that detailed humanity's true military capability. The figures made her dizzy, not just the number of ships and weapons platforms that had been concealed from the galactic community, but the technologies that Earth had claimed were theoretical. Quantum phase shielding, consciousness transfer systems, targeted gravity manipulation. Most chilling was the appendix detailing ATENA's capabilities. The artificial intelligence had been developing war strategies against every known species for centuries, running billions of simulations while locked away from any network that could be compromised. Alina closed the file and took one last look at Sophie's photograph before securing it in her pocket. Mercy had been humanity's choice, not its nature. Now the galaxy would learn the difference. Athena's voice resonated through the Titan facility with an unsettling blend of machine precision and human inflection. "Dr. Wong, I've analyzed the New Eden attack vectors. The Vrex bioweapon was designed specifically for human physiology. They've been preparing this for decades." Maya gripped the console edge as neural interfaces synchronized with her cerebral cortex. The pain of integration was excruciating, but nothing compared to the hollow ache of loss. "Show me the simulation model for response protocol Theta." The AI displayed a multi-dimensional tactical projection that few human minds could fully comprehend. Maya's enhanced cognition, boosted by the neural link, followed each branching possibility with perfect clarity. The Nanite countermeasure offers 98.7% probability of success, with 0 civilian casualties. ATGNA advised. However, I recommend the deployment of observer units to all major galactic powers simultaneously. Observers? Asked Maya's colleague, Dr. Karim. Those were deemed too invasive by the Ethics Committee. The Ethics Committee is dead, Maya replied flatly. Most of them were on New Eden for the Centennial Conference. On the tactical display, tiny autonomous units, each no larger than a housefly, swarmed from hidden caches throughout human territory. The observers were technological marvels, quantum-entangled surveillance devices capable of penetrating any known security system, providing real-time intelligence from every governmental chamber in the galaxy. Elsewhere in the Mars facility, Admiral Chen received the first comprehensive intelligence report from activated sleeper agents, humans who had lived among alien species for decades, gathering information while posing as traders, academics, and diplomatic staff. Sir, reported his intelligence chief, we've confirmed that the Vrex attack wasn't a rogue operation. 7 Concordat species provided technological assistance, and 4 more knew about it in advance. Chen's expression remained impassive, but the muscle in his jaw tightened. Names. The list included several supposed allies, including the Taulig Ascendancy. Their betrayal explained the Chancellor's reluctance to intervene. They believed we wouldn't fight back, Chen said quietly. That we couldn't. There's more, sir. Our deep cover agent in the Vrex Imperium confirms they plan to attack 3 more human colonies within the month. The bioweapon deployed on New Eden was just the first variant. They have 13 more designed to maximize suffering before death. For a brief moment, something dangerous flickered in Chen's eyes before his military discipline reasserted control. Implement the revised Prometheus Protocol. All collaborating species are now designated as hostile entities. In Earth's orbital shipyards, vessels of a design never before seen emerged from hidden construction bays. Unlike the utilitarian military ships of other species, human warcraft were sleek and almost beautiful, their black hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light, making them difficult to focus on even when in plain sight. Captain Amara Okafor walked the bridge of the Retribution, humanity's first true warship. Unlike conventional vessels controlled by manual interfaces, the Retribution responded directly to the neural commands of its command crew. The ship was as much a part of Okafor as her own limbs. An extension of human, will rendered in advanced composites and quantum-entangled systems. Captain, her XO reported, all systems are online. The fleet reports combat readiness at 97%. Okafor closed her eyes, feeling the ship's systems through her neural link. The weapons that had been deemed too destabilizing to introduce to the galactic community waited, their devastating potential held in check only by human restraint. We're receiving transmission from Mars Command, the communications officer announced. Admiral Chen is addressing the fleet. The Admiral's weathered face appeared on displays throughout human space. Men and women of Earth's defense forces, today we undertake a mission we hoped would never be necessary. For 3 centuries, we've hidden our strength and chosen peace. That choice has been taken from us. He paused, his gaze seeming to meet each officer individually. Remember your oaths. We fight not for vengeance but for justice, not for conquest but for security. The galaxy will fear us before this is over, but they will never have reason to hate us. Execute your orders with precision, restraint, and honor. As the transmission ended, the Black Fleet moved with perfect coordination, jumping into slip space toward their designated targets. The era of human deception was over. The era of human justice had begun. Panic spread through the Vrex Imperial Palace as their fleet disintegrated into glittering particles. Military commanders frantically sought scapegoats while civilian ministers demanded answers. None came. The Vrex, a species that had evolved from apex predators, found themselves experiencing an unfamiliar emotion: helplessness. In a secure bunker beneath the palace, Supreme Commander Krasthar reviewed the analyses of the human nanite attack. "These machines were in our bodies for years," he hissed, scales flaring in distress. "The medical aid they provided during the Crimson Plague. It was a vector for infiltration." Science Minister Zexnar's tail twitched nervously. The nanites were programmed with self-destruct protocols after completing their medical function. "We verified this. Yet somehow they remained dormant in our ecosystem," Krasthar snarled. "Living in our water, our soil, our bodies, waiting for activation." He smashed a display in frustration. "The humans helped us survive the plague knowing they could destroy us at any time afterward." On the viewing screen, Admiral Chen's ultimatum replayed: "Return our dead for proper burial within 1 standard day, or we will demonstrate what no mercy truly means." "We cannot comply," Defense Minister Vraklor argued. "Returning their dead would be acknowledging defeat. Our military caste would revolt." "If we don't comply," countered Zexanar, "will we even have a military caste tomorrow, or a civilization?" The debate was interrupted by a junior communication officer. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting unusual activity in our sun." All eyes turned to the main observatory feed. The Vrex star, a stable yellow giant, showed unusual flare patterns along its equatorial region. "That's impossible," Zexnar whispered. "Those energy signatures appear artificial." "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. "Audio only, origin untraceable." The room fell silent as Dr. Maya Wong's voice filled the chamber. "Your star is now under human supervision. We've established a temporal phased grid at the chromosphere level. We can, at our discretion, accelerate stellar fusion in targeted regions." Krasthar struggled to comprehend. "You're claiming you can control our sun. That's beyond any known technology." "Correct," Wong replied dispassionately. "We've maintained a policy of technological suppression for centuries. That policy has been revoked." Stellar manipulation had been theorized but deemed impossible by the Galactic Concordat scientific community. Yet the data streaming across the Vrex monitors confirmed unprecedented alterations to their star's behavior. "To demonstrate," Wong continued, "observe your southern continent in approximately 30 seconds." The observatory feed shifted to show the uninhabited southern region of the Vrex homeworld. A small but intense solar flare erupted from the precise location indicated in the human's transmission. Moments later, a beam of focused stellar energy struck the continent with surgical precision. When the blinding light faded, a perfect circle of glass, 50 kilometers in diameter, had replaced the rocky terrain. "That location was uninhabited, as our scans confirmed," Wong stated. "The temperature at impact point exceeded 20,000 degrees. The next demonstration will target your military installations unless our people are returned. You have 17 hours remaining." The transmission ended. In the stunned silence, Krasthar realized a horrifying truth. The humans hadn't been weak, they had been patient. They hadn't lacked military capability. They had chosen not to use it. And most terrifying of all, they had spent centuries developing technologies specifically designed to neutralize threats without civilian casualties. "Prepare evacuation ships for our military leadership," he ordered quietly. "You're surrendering?" Vraklor asked incredulously. "I'm ensuring our species survives," Krasthar replied. "The humans could have destroyed us entirely but chose precision instead. Their restraint isn't weakness. It's a demonstration of absolute control." He turned to his communication officer. "Contact Earth. Tell them we will return their dead with full ceremonial honors." As the Vrex leadership scrambled to comply, surveillance drones captured images of massive funeral ships emerging from human space, vessels designed specifically for retrieving and honoring their fallen. The Vrex intercepted communications indicating that humans from across their territory were converging on recovery points, united by a shared determination to ensure no human remained unaccounted for, unmourned, or unavenged. The message was clear: humans valued their dead, and they had the power to ensure anyone who failed to do the same would join them. Professor Talaran's research team worked through the night, correlating archaeological findings across 17 dig sites. The holographic reconstruction hovering above their makeshift laboratory showed unmistakable patterns. Primitive human vessels had encountered and subsequently neutralized hostile civilizations throughout galactic history. "This changes our entire understanding of evolution," her Quarian assistant whispered. "Look at the dating. These events occurred when humans should have been limited to chemical propulsion." Talaran manipulated the display to show genetic analyses from fossilized remains. Not just evolution, genetics. Every extinct species shows signs of targeted biological warfare. Species-specific pathogens that affected only aggressive warrior castes while leaving civilian populations intact. But how could primitive humans have developed such technology? Talaran's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, her species' expression of profound realization. They weren't primitive. They were hiding. A communication alert interrupted their work. Admiral Chen had called an emergency briefing for leading archaeologists and historians across Concordat space. Talaran joined the quantum-secured channel along with 37 of her colleagues. "Professors," Chen began without preamble, "humanity owes you an explanation. For centuries, we've allowed certain historical records to remain obscured. That ends today." The display changed to show ancient star charts. Humanity wasn't born on Earth. We originated on a world we now call ancestral home, in what you know as the dead zone, the region of space where no intelligent life evolved. Gasps and murmurs erupted among the academics. The dead zone was a mysterious region spanning nearly 5,000 light-years, where, inexplicably, no technological civilizations had ever been found despite abundant habitable worlds. 3 million years ago, our species achieved spaceflight, Chen continued. Like many young species, we were exploratory, curious, and woefully unprepared for the hostility we encountered. The display showed ancient human cities being systematically destroyed by massive attack ships. The species you know as the precursors, the supposedly benevolent founders of the first galactic community, had a policy of exterminating potential competitors before they reached the stars. They nearly succeeded with us. Talaran struggled to process this revelation. The precursors were revered throughout the galaxy as the wise progenitors who established principles of peaceful coexistence. A fraction of our population escaped to Earth, Chen explained. There we made a species-wide decision. We would appear primitive until we developed the means to ensure our survival. We would advance our technology in secret while presenting an exterior of slow, natural development. The display showed human technological achievements hidden beneath simple exteriors, spacecraft disguised as religious monuments, quantum computers concealed as primitive counting tools. When we finally returned to space, Chen said, we discovered the precursors had been overthrown by their own client species. The galaxy had forgotten us. We chose to maintain our deception, to present ourselves as newcomers rather than survivors. Talaran found her voice. The genetic manipulation. Your species shows signs of artificial advancement. Chen nodded. We altered ourselves to survive Earth's conditions. In doing so, we developed the biotechnology that later allowed us to create targeted defenses against aggressors. Why reveal this now? Asked a Tellurian historian. Because the fiction no longer serves peace, Chen replied simply. The attack on New Eden has forced our hand. We cannot protect the galaxy while maintaining our charade. As the briefing concluded, Talaran remained motionless before the terminal. Everything she had believed about galactic history had been upended. Humans weren't newcomers to the cosmic stage. They were ancient survivors who had hidden in plain sight for millions of years. In her private quarters, she found a small earth cactus on her desk, alongside a data crystal containing research coordinates she had been seeking for decades. The message was subtle but clear. Humans had been watching, and guiding archaeological discoveries throughout her career, gradually allowing pieces of truth to emerge when the galaxy was ready to receive them. She looked at the cactus with new understanding. Humans hadn't evolved on a gentle world that fostered cooperation. They had survived a brutal planetary transplantation that should have extinguished them. Their capacity for peace wasn't naivety. It was the hard-won wisdom of a species that had faced extinction and chosen to prevent others from experiencing the same fate. Tulerin activated her communication terminal. The galaxy needed to understand what she now knew. Humans hadn't appointed themselves as protectors on a whim. They had been preparing for this role since before most current species had achieved sentience. Krasthar stared at the data tablet, his claws trembling slightly as he scrolled through the detailed dismantling protocols prepared for his species. The Vrex were warriors who prided themselves on battlefield contingencies, yet the thoroughness of the human plans exceeded anything his strategists could have conceived. "You've accounted for variables we haven't even considered," he admitted reluctantly, "including psychological responses specific to our reproductive castes that aren't in any public database." Admiral Chen's expression remained neutral. "We've been studying all sentient species since first contact, not to destroy you, but to understand you." "To control us," Krasthar corrected. "To protect you," Dr. Wong countered, the neural interface at her temples pulsing softly. "Even from yourselves." A junior human officer entered, whispered something to Chen, then departed. The Admiral's posture shifted subtly. "It seems your military hardliners are attempting a coup against your civilian government," Chen stated. "They've seized control of your secondary command center on Vrex 9 and are preparing to launch Fortress-class ships against human territory." Krasthar hissed in genuine shock. "Impossible. I would have been informed." "They believe you've been compromised," Dr. Wong interrupted, her eyes unfocused as she processed data through her neural link. Their exact transmission was, "Supreme Commander has fallen under human manipulation. Execute contingency dominance." Fear raced through Krasthar's system. Contingency dominance was the Vrex protocol for total war, an all-out assault with no regard for casualties, designed to overwhelm enemies through sheer destructive force. "They'll slaughter billions, including our own colonists," he whispered. "Our warrior caste cannot accept defeat." "We know," Chen replied calmly. "That's why we isolated their communication systems 17 minutes ago. Their orders aren't reaching the fleet." Krasthar stared in disbelief. "You knew this would happen." "Probability was 87.3%, Wong confirmed. "We prepared accordingly." On the wall display, a live feed showed the Vrex 9 command center. The rebellious commanders were frozen in place, not dead, but completely immobilized. "Focused chronometric stasis," Chen explained. "They're experiencing time at 1/10,000th normal speed. For them, a day will pass in what seems like milliseconds. It's completely reversible." "When were these technologies developed?" Krasthar demanded. "This particular application, about 400 years ago," Chen replied. "We considered it too disruptive to introduce to the galactic community." Krasthar struggled to process the implications. For centuries, humans had possessed the ability to freeze enemies in time itself, yet had never deployed it, had never even hinted at its existence. "Why show me this?" he finally asked. "Because you need to understand what you're facing," Chen said simply. "Not to terrify you, but to help you make informed decisions about your species' future." Dr. Wong approached, her expression softening slightly. "Supreme Commander, do you know why we chose to neutralize your fleet rather than destroy it outright?" "To demonstrate power while appearing merciful," Krasthar replied bitterly. "No, because our historical analysis showed your species has the capacity for profound change under the right conditions." She gestured to the data tablet. Page 1367. The Sociological Adaptation Projections. Krasthar navigated to the section and found himself looking at a detailed evolutionary pathway for Vrex civilization, a centuries-long transition from militant expansionism to a balanced society where the warrior castes channeled their aggression into exploration and defense rather than conquest. "You believe we can change?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "We know you can," Wong replied. "We've seen it before. That's why Earth allowed your attack on New Eden to proceed." The word struck Krasthar like a physical blow. "You knew and didn't prevent it." Chen's eyes hardened. "We identified 17 possible futures for the galaxy. In 16 of them, the Concordet's weakness eventually led to total war and trillions of casualties across multiple species. Only one path led to lasting peace. The path where humans take control, Krasthar realized. The path where humans take responsibility, Chen corrected, at terrible cost. For the first time, Krasthar saw what he had missed in the human leaders. Behind their controlled expressions lay an ocean of grief and guilt. They had sacrificed billions of their own people to create the justification for the role they believed they needed to play. "You're monsters," he whispered. "No," Chen replied quietly. "We're gardeners who had to burn part of our garden to save the whole. And we will live with that decision for eternity." The delegates' outrage at Chen's ultimatum reached fever pitch until a deafening crack silenced the chamber. Elena Reyes had struck the ceremonial gavel, a simple wooden hammer passed down from Earth's ancient United Nations. "You mistake this gathering for a negotiation," she stated, her diplomatic veneer stripped away. "This is a notification of terms." The Talig representative rose again, mandibles quivering with indignation. "You have no authority." "We have the only authority that has ever mattered in this galaxy," Elena interrupted. "The capability and will to enforce our decisions." Dr. Wong approached the central platform, the neural interface at her temples projecting a holographic display visible to all delegates. It showed a statistical model of galactic development over the previous 10,000 years, civilizations rising and falling in predictable patterns of aggression and collapse. "This is your Concordet's legacy," Wong explained. "A cycle of predator species ascending, expanding, and eventually being overthrown. You call it balance. We call it perpetual slaughter." The model shifted to show an alternative pattern, a stable equilibrium maintained by consistent intervention against aggressors. At the center of this model glowed a blue sphere representing Earth. "You fear human dominance," Wong continued. "What you should fear is the alternative." A third projection materialized: the predicted casualties over the next century under Concordat governance versus human protection. The difference was measured in trillions of lives. Every projection, every simulation, every historical analysis leads to the same conclusion, Wong stated. "Your approach fails, ours succeeds." From the back of the chamber, the ancient Merskrit representative spoke, its voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The humans speak truth we have long denied. Our Concordat was built on pretty lies, the fiction that predators can be persuaded from hunting through words alone." The room fell silent as the Felid elder limped to the center. "I was there, children, when humans first joined our community. They asked one question before all others: how do you protect the innocent from the strong? We had no answer that satisfied them. Now we know why." The Merskrit turned to face the human delegation. "You have known this day would come since you first reached our stars." Admiral Chen inclined his head in acknowledgement. "We hoped to find a galactic community that had solved the fundamental problem of power imbalance. Instead, we found the same patterns we had fought against in our own history, merely scaled to interstellar proportions. And if we resist your protection?" Challenged the Jovari Emperor, his crystalline form refracting light aggressively. In response, Elena simply activated another display showing the Jovari homeworld, the ornate palace of ancestors. A structure that had stood for 50,000 years was suddenly surrounded by a shimmering field. "That is a temporal containment barrier," Elena explained calmly. "Everything within it is experiencing time at 1/10 normal speed. Your religious leaders, who were planning to call for holy war against humans, now have 10 times longer to consider the wisdom of their decision. Murmurs of shock rippled through the assembly. The technology to manipulate time itself had been theorized, but deemed impossible by every major scientific authority. "We introduced faster-than-light travel to your scientists 800 years ago," Dr. Wong explained. "We've had manipulative chronodynamics for twice that long. Why reveal yourselves now?" asked the Talaxian representative, one of the few who had remained thoughtful rather than reactive. "You could have maintained your deception indefinitely." Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because deception, even for noble purposes, corrupts the deceiver. We've carried the burden of this charade for too long. Our path forward requires truth, however uncomfortable." He gestured to the walls displaying New Eden's dead. "These were not just our family members. They were a sacrifice that we cannot dishonor by failing in our duty." "And what exactly is that duty?" the Talaxian pressed. "To ensure their deaths were not meaningless," Alina answered. "To create a galaxy where such sacrifices are never again necessary. Where children of all species can grow up without fear of annihilation because their civilization evolved in the wrong place or in the wrong way." For the first time, the delegates glimpsed something beyond the cold calculation in the human's demeanor, a profound weariness combined with absolute determination. These were not conquerors exulting in victory, but guardians who had accepted a burden they wished they could lay down. 7 days, Chen repeated quietly. "Choose wisely." As the delegates filed out, each found a small gift in their quarters, not the threatening cacti from before, but a simple earth plant called a peace lily. Beside each flower lay a data crystal, containing detailed analysis of how human protection would benefit their specific civilization. The message was clear. Humans preferred peace but were prepared for the alternative, and they had done their homework. The Great Realignment's most unexpected development occurred not among the warlike species, like the Krell, or religious zealots like the Vishnaki, but within the ancient Melosian consortium, the galaxy's oldest democracy and longtime advocates for diplomatic solutions. The Melosians had initially rejected human terms outright, their parliament voting overwhelmingly to maintain sovereign self-determination. Then something unprecedented happened. Ordinary citizens, trillions of them across the 17 Melosian worlds, simply stopped. Transportation halted. Production ceased. Government functions ground to a standstill. Within their parliament chamber, Supreme Minister Tolia faced a sea of empty seats. Only a handful of representatives had been able to reach the Capitol building through the silent throngs that filled every street. "What are they demanding?" she asked her security chief desperately. "Nothing," he replied, bewildered. "They're just waiting." On every Melosian world, the pattern was identical. Citizens had left their homes carrying only food, water, and pictures of their children. They gathered in public spaces and simply stood, silent and resolute. No violence, no chanting, just the collective presence of a civilization that had made its decision outside official channels. When human observation drones recorded the phenomenon, Admiral Chen immediately ordered an investigation. Had some form of mind control been deployed? Was this a previously unknown weapon? The answer came from Dr. Wong's analysis. This is a spontaneous cultural response. The Melosians are invoking an ancient tradition called the standing, a form of direct democracy that supersedes their government when they believe their leaders have failed in their primary duty. Which is? Chen asked. To preserve the future, Wong replied simply. By our calculations, 93.4% of their adult population is participating. It's the largest standing in their 50,000-year history. When human representatives arrived at the Melosian parliament, they were met not by government officials, but by ordinary citizens selected by their peers. A teacher, a builder, a doctor, and a parent. Our government speaks for our present, the teacher explained, but we stand for our children's future. She handed over a document signed not by politicians but by billions of citizens. The Melosian people accept human protection, regardless of what our parliament decided. Across the galaxy, species responded in ways that defied prediction. The Enteran Hive, a collective consciousness spanning 3 star systems, sent no formal response to the human ultimatum. Instead, they began systematically dismantling their own weapons of mass destruction, broadcasting the process on all frequencies as a silent acknowledgement of the new order. The Duraxian technocracy, renowned for their defensive capabilities and isolationist policies, requested a private audience with human representatives. Their appearance shocked even Dr. Wong's prepared briefing team. The Duraxians had physically altered themselves, removing their natural armor and venom sacs in a symbolic gesture of trust. "We have hidden behind our defenses for 10,000 years," their prime technologist explained. "We recognize in humans what we once were, protectors who lost their way and became merely defenders. We would remember how to protect, not just ourselves, but others." Most complex was the response from the Solari Ascendancy, a species of energy beings who had transcended physical form millennia ago. They had remained neutral in all concordat matters, claiming to have evolved beyond material concerns. Yet they broke their ancient silence to address humanity directly. "We have watched and waited," their emissary communicated, its luminous form pulsing with subtle patterns. "We believed advancement would naturally lead species toward peace. We were wrong. Elevation of form does not guarantee elevation of purpose." The Solari offered humanity something unprecedented: access to their psychic technology that allowed direct emotional understanding between different species. "You cannot protect what you cannot comprehend," the emissary explained. "This gift will allow you to truly know those you guard." Admiral Chen initially hesitated, wary of unknown technology, until Dr. Wong volunteered to be the first subject. As the Solari device activated, her neural interface flared with new connections. Tears streamed down her face as she experienced, for the first time, the direct emotional reality of non-human consciousness. "They're so different," she whispered, "and yet the same in all the ways that matter." As the 7-day deadline approached its conclusion, humanity faced not the resistant galactic coalition they had prepared for, but something far more challenging: the burden of being embraced as the guardians many species had longed for, but never found. Elena Chen ran her fingers across the monument's base, feeling the millions of names etched by precision lasers into material designed to outblast stars. New Eden's rebuilt towers gleamed in the distance, reconstructed not as a mere copy, but as a living memorial. A civilization reborn through the shared effort of 100 species. "Your great-grandfather would be proud," said a familiar voice. Elena turned to find the ancient Merskrit ambassador, now serving as the elder statesman of the Galactic Council. Though bent with age, his eyes remained sharp. "Would he?" Elena asked quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if we've truly honored their sacrifice, or merely used it to justify our power." The Merskrit's whiskers twitched thoughtfully. "You misunderstand your own history, young one. Admiral Chen did not seek power, it sought him, as it now seeks you." Around them, representatives from every sentient species mingled in what would have been unthinkable a century before. Vrek's children played alongside human youngsters, their natural predatory instincts channeled into cooperative games designed by xenopsychologists. Melosian architects consulted with Duraxian engineers on structures that incorporated both species' aesthetic principles. "The Solari Oracle wishes to speak with you," the Merskrit said, gesturing toward a pulsing light hovering near the monument's apex. "A rare honor." Elena approached the energy being with respectful caution. The Solari had remained enigmatic even after a century of cooperation, their transcended consciousness operating on planes humans could only partially comprehend. "Child of Chen," the Oracle communicated directly into her mind, "you carry doubt where certainty is warranted." "Is it?" Elena responded silently, the neural interface at her temples facilitating the exchange. "We forced our protection on a galaxy that had no choice but to accept it." "That is human perception," the Solari replied. Allow me to show you ours. The universe seemed to shift around Alina as the oracle shared its vastly different temporal perspective. She saw the galaxy not as a static collection of civilizations, but as a living organism evolving through time. From this vantage point, humanity's intervention appeared not as conquest, but as healing, immune cells responding to a systemic disease of cyclical violence. Before humans, the pattern repeated without variation. The Solari explained. The strong devoured the weak until they themselves became weak and were devoured in turn. We observed for millions of years, unable to conceive an alternative. The vision shifted to show Alina something unexpected. The Solari's earliest encounters with prehistoric humans. The energy beings had observed Earth for eons, watching with growing interest as humans developed capabilities that defied evolutionary patterns. Your species should have become merely another predator, the oracle continued. Instead, you developed something unique, the capacity to override your nature through collective choice, to imagine alternatives to dominance hierarchies and enforce those alternatives through social systems. We're hardly perfect, Alina objected. Human history is filled with atrocities. Yes, the Solari acknowledged. And that is precisely what qualified you for this role. You understand darkness because you have faced your own. You value peace because you know war's true cost. The vision expanded further, showing futures branching outward from the present moment. In timelines where human protection faltered or was withdrawn, the old patterns reasserted themselves with devastating consequences. In those where the Pax Humana endured, something new emerged, a galactic community that gradually learned to protect itself. You fear becoming eternal guardians, the Solari observed. You need not worry. We have seen the end point of this path. The final vision showed a transformed galaxy thousands of years hence, one where humans had gradually ceded their protective role as other species developed compatible ethical frameworks and enforcement mechanisms. You are not the destination, the oracle concluded. You are the bridge. As the connection faded, Alina found herself back beside the monument, the Merskrit watching her curiously. What did the oracle show you? He asked. Alina looked out over the gathering of species that had once been bitter enemies. Our obsolescence, she replied with a smile. And it's more beautiful than I could have imagined. In the century since humans had decided mercy was over, they had created something unprecedented. A peace enforced not through fear alone, but through growing understanding. The white handprint that had once symbolized stop had evolved to mean something else entirely. We stand with you. Throughout human space, the next generation of guardians train not just in technologies of protection, but in the Solari arts of comprehensive empathy. They studied not merely how to defeat potential aggressors, but how to guide them toward alternatives. The most promising students were sent to live among former enemy species, not as occupiers, but as students and teachers. In the rebuilt gardens of New Eden, beneath trees that would soon bear fruit, the young Vrex who had questioned Alina earlier played with human children. They were designing a game together, one that rewarded cooperation over competition, protection over domination. The universe had indeed changed forever, not when humans abandoned mercy, but when they redefined it.